How you doing, Jay?
Hi.
Thanks for having me down to Jaywalk Guitars here in Somerset. So today I'm going to show you a little bit more of an in-depth look at ID series amps. Now, they've been on the market for a while now, so I'm sure you've played them and tried them and sold them, which is great. But I'm going to maybe throw a little bit of a different angle on it for you, so you'll have some different ingredients to show customers and stuff. So really, for me, the first thing that people instantly think, customer-wise, is it's yet another modelling amp out on the market. Whereas it's a little bit of a different angle to look at, really. There isn't any buttons on there that allow you to press a button and it will take you to a classic amp, but they are in there. So it's a little bit more of an education to figure out what those amps used as far as valves are concerned and what kind of voicing they have. Now, there's two modes for the amp. We're going to start in manual mode, so everything works as you see it. Bank mode is where all our presets and our stored patches are saved. But the first place to look is the voicing. There's 6 different voices to choose from. We've got warm clean and bright clean. In the world of Blackstar, bright clean generally refers to a more boutique clean amp, so it breaks up earlier.
Got you.
If you dig in harder, it starts to grind a bit more. Warm clean is very rich, very warm. Crunch and super crunch, so there we get into the realms of our overdrives and distortions.
Yep.
And then for really seriously high gain, we've got OD1 and OD2 up the top.
Okay, got you.
Overdrive 1 and overdrive 2. We've then got a gain stage along with a volume, and interestingly, this allows you to gain your clean sounds, which is really a first for a digital amplifier to be able to do that. If you, for example, select a clean bright and turn the gain up, it starts to really bite. Yeah. We've got our 3-tone stack and Blackstar's patented ISF on the end there. Now again, interestingly, ISF on every other Blackstar product has only ever really worked on the overdrive channels or the distortion channels. You can actually use ISF now with the clean, which is really interesting. Yeah, and then we've got the innovation. So this is something that every Blackstar product that comes out, there's always an innovation, something new, something exciting to push that envelope a little further. TVP stands for True Valve Power, and you've got 6 choices of individual valve simulations there.
Fantastic.
So we've got EL84s, 6V6, EL34s, KT88s, KT66, 6L6, many different classic valves. Now, most people, most guitar buyers maybe will know a couple of those different valves. They won't know all of them, not all the time.
6L6,
So,
EL34.
yeah, so the common ones, yeah. So, generally speaking, if you can see your customers getting a little lost with your explanations of valves, around this bottom area here is a more compressed, tighter sound.
Okay.
So it works well for if you're imitating a small valve combo with a bit of bite there. And a little bit further up the top here, around this curve, there's lots of headroom. So 6L6, becomes more open, less compressed. So that's a good way to explain the curve. So if your customer's looking a little lost, lots of gain to very clean, lots of headroom to a more tighter compressed sound. Yeah, you got it. So really, for me, when I looked at ID amps, the one thing that I've seen a lot of people do is generally choose a voice. More often than not, if it's a younger guy who's into his rock and his metal, it tends to be an overdrive or distortion. And then they'll flick through TVP until they find something that's pleasing to the ear.
Okay.
That's not an incorrect way to look at it, but the way I kind of took it was more about the relationship of the voicing, where our ISF, our infinite shape feature lies, whether it's more American or all the way on to a more of a British woody sound, and where our valve simulation lies, to try and recreate some classic amps over the years. So
it's going the opposite direction.
Yeah. So what I'll try and do, I'll throw in the occasional popular lick or the famous lick in there to try and put you in mind of some of the sounds, but more often than not, I'll just talk about that kind of era of amps, maybe. So the first thing I normally do is turn TVP off. The reason there's a button there is simply because the guys at Blackstar are very proud of what they've achieved with the TVP section. So that's really to show you the difference between what a normal solid state amplifier sounds like and the new Blackstar ID series.
Of course.
So really you could say every other amplifier prior to this, every other solid state amplifier is your college, they're all your colleges, and this is your university. So it's the next level of education for someone, really.
Okay.
Okay, so what I normally do is I create a bit of a curve for a type of an amp. So we'll go for a clean warm, not too much on the gain, fairly high volume, fairly heavy bass, scoop the mid a touch, treble around about noon, ISF to the USA side.
Okay.
And just to get ready our 6L6 for our tube simulation, I'll turn it off for now. And the third segment of our reverbs, which is spring.
Yep.
So just give the guitar amp a little bit of life when you're demoing. So if we go with that curve, if we start with TVP off, a good way to show a customer what's actually happening is if you just simply strum a chord and then press TVP or engage TVP while it's sustaining. So then they can actually hear the difference in the level jump. So we'll do that now. So that's a really good way to kind of show them exactly what's happening with the level. But also, not only does the level change, the actual sound of your strings changes to my ears. So it feels different to the guitar player under his fingers. So if I just play something without, and if you wouldn't mind once I stop the phrase, just pressing it for me. And if you have a listen, you can actually feel the difference, hopefully. So. So a really good way of showing the TVP exactly what it's doing, and if you do it on a clean tone, it's very easy to listen to.
Yeah. Really simple.
So with that curve of EQ and our TVP selection and our spring reverb, what I'm trying to create there is a classic warm American combo sound. So if you think of a very popular American combo, which is a warm sound, but when you dig in, you get that glassy brightness. So immediately we get a... But when we dig in, so there we're looking at a very classic warm American amplifier combo. Next up from there on the voicing, if we go to clean bright, we start to get a bit more edge to the sound. So if we increase the gain stage here, bring the volume down a touch so we don't scare anybody off.
Fair.
Bring the bass back, a little less on the scoop mid, treble a little more, still in the American side of our infinite shape feature, and 6v6 as our tube simulation.
Okay.
We're then looking at maybe a really early kind of 50s small growling American combo. So there's a bit of edge there, but it's generally quite clean. So we've got a bit more brightness there. And this is a really good moment to refer back to what I was saying earlier about increasing the gain and just showing somebody that you can get quite a lot of bite out for your clean tone. So we've got the gain up quite high there. It's quite cool to show people that you're actually getting a clean sound that's got a little bit of drive on there. So that's very cool. So we'll bring that gain stage back for the moment and we'll just swap guitars. Because we're getting more into the realms of higher gain stage. Thank you very much. Okay, so our next voicing along crunch, we just put it to there, just increase the gain a touch. Volume's back there, yep. About middle there. ISF anywhere around that region of the UK, and EL34 as our tube simulation.
Cool.
And you can kind of picture a late 60s, 70s big British stack on stage at a festival. So let's just kind of put you in mind of that. did promise you some licks.
Yep,
So that kind of puts you in mind
Yeah.
of that kind of tone. But if we go back to something like EL84, there we can maybe look at something like again a British tone, but maybe more of a Brian May kind of idea
Got you.
from the Kossoff sound. So if we maybe look at EL34 for a Queen song, then it will sound okay, but EL84 will give us more of a representation of that,
more authentic.
of that classic, yeah, a bit more authentic, yeah. So just to kind of put you in mind of that. So now to 84, EL84.
Far closer.
Yeah, so a lot closer to the authentic sound of Brian May, a very spongy sound.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. If we go back to our original voice of Clean Bright now, you can get more of a clean Brian May kind of tone. So a bit more on the gain stage, so we're biting hard, but again we've still got that spongy. Very much,
Compressed.
yeah, very much that compressed British 60s. Works really well for that. So on the crunch sound, there's a couple of different configurations that we looked at previously, EL34 and EL84. But KT66, you could maybe imagine something like an old Cream record, that kind of
Got
vibe.
you,
So
yeah.
great for blues, if you're into that kind of Peter Green tone or that Billy Gibbons kind of sound. So if I give you, if we go to crunch again, sorry, on our voicing, a very, very similar EQ curve to before, ISF British. EL34, we can get quite a nice blues tone, but KT66 will be that just that little touch sweeter, hopefully, to your ears. So. 66.
It's a little
Yeah,
bit more
just
musical,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, more musical. Definitely, it's got that honky sound to the pickups. So. 66. Great for that kind of thing. And if you want to be traditional, maybe introduce the younger guys into rolling their tone off a touch and getting that. That kind of tone, you know.
Definitely.
Roll the tone up a little bit more for that Billy Gibbons kind of vibe. Works really well for that. KT66 is your blues guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so from there, if we go to Super Crunch, now we're getting into that realm of a lot more higher gain stages. If we go back to EL34, still sticking around that British side, a little bit more on the gain stage, we can look at, sorry mate, put that back. We can look at players like Slash, Randy Rhoads,
Got you.
those kind of guys. So nice high gain British stacks, so you got a lot of poke there. Really great for that classic rock kind of era, maybe late 70s through the 80s, that kind of
Yeah.
that kind of period. So again, there's tons of room on the gain there to push it even more if you want. You can get some classic licks out on there, so if we increase the gain. So you can really kind of get that customer to picture the tone.
So real nice clarity to it.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. With all Black Star products, the definition across the board on the strings is very, very cool. Of course, this is a good moment to kind of talk to people about the way the amp cleans up as well. So with a lot of solid state amplifiers, when you back the volume off, it tends to crumble away. And here you can kind of... Right, I mean, we're not changing anything apart from the volume here. Very, very cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So from Super Crunch, let's maybe talk about an American high gain sound. So let's talk about someone like Eddie Van Halen, for example. His sound is it's got quite a scooped mid on it.
Yep.
But it's very high gain. There's some high trebles there. So if I was to play a Van Halen lick on British EL34, it would sound pretty cool.
Yeah.
But 6L6 and ISF over to the American side, all the way off, will sound a little bit more authentic, I think, for an Eddie sound. So let's try that. So that was our British with EL34. If you keep that in mind, we go for 6L6 and roll the ISF to the American. And it works. You can hear that kind of thinner Eddie type tone, you know.
Definitely.
Because he's used many amps over the years, but a lot of them modded.
There's a bit of phase on there.
Yeah, and you're there, yeah, definitely. So from Super Crunch onto OD1 and OD2, you now get a built-in noise gate.
Okay.
You can turn the noise gate on and off via the Insider software, which is a free download,
Brilliant.
but you can't do it via the amp. Okay. So it's important to remember if you're rolling your volumes back off, it's not going to work so well on the OD1 and OD2. So if we just get some standard guitar noise from our Super Crunch voicing, and as soon as we turn it to OD1, silence, which is great for those kind of guys that are in that new metal, playability-wise. Tons of gain, but no noise, which is great. On the Insider software, there's a low threshold and a high threshold, so it's not variable, but it's currently set to low. So it's still there, but as regards when you mute your strings, it's very, very quiet, which is great. So if we keep that in mind and look at maybe a high gain American head, so tons of gain there. Let's put it about a quarter past the hour. Fairly bassy. If we scoop the mid, ISF on the American side. 6L6 for our tube, which is inherently more of an American valve. Still got a bit of room, spring reverb on there, should I say. So we can kind of make out where we're going here. So. Very cool.
Very effective noise.
Perfect for those kind of metal players out there. So really with OD1, I looked at the American metal side of things. If we turn it to OD2 voicing and go to KT88s and take our ISF over to the British side, we can maybe look at more of a British metal sound. So if we just play one more riff on OD1 voicing with the American styling for a high gain metal sound, I'll take it back over and drop a British metal riff in there, so it will put you in mind of that. So. So hopefully that would have kind of
Yeah.
given you an idea where we were going with that.
Definitely.
So what I've done there is go from the cleanest to the highest gain setting through the voices and matched a valve simulation on TVP, True Valve Power, to kind of give you a good example of some classics over the years.
Definitely.
So as much as there isn't a button which takes you there, you can certainly find it and show a customer and educate them what valves were in what amps over the years.
Makes sense.
And again, every now and then it's a good idea to turn TVP on and off, just to kind of let you know the difference between a solid state and a valve simulation.
yeah.
Yeah. So if we just do that for now. So it's very cool to show a customer. It's like taking the quilt off the amp, you know.
Completely.
It starts to become alive. Now, a good thing to talk about here as well, while we're on our last voicing, is ISF. A lot of people, you know, still consider it to be that mid-contour control. It does affect the mids in a big way, but if you can picture ISF changing all three frequencies of your general tone stack, so imagine your bass, your middle, your treble.
Yes. Yeah.
ISF, as we move it, it moves the value size of that tone stack.
Okay, got you.
So that will give you a good representation visually for a customer.
Excellent.
So rather than just saying it's patented to Blackstar and it gives you an American or British sound, American being more scooped, British being more of a woody pushed mid, you can give them a good visual representation. It changes all three frequencies, so that's a pretty cool way to explain that. But it's a good sonic control of your sound. If we just detune. So I've just drop tuned to D, so I can chug along on a chord, and I'll move ISF around as I'm playing, just to give you a good representation of the sonic change that can happen. So. So that's a good way to show a customer as well.
Definitely,
So they can hear,
very effective.
yeah, they can hear what's going on. So we'll go back to a clean tone now to look at the effects, if that's okay.
Yeah,
so
sure.
maybe a warm clean. So throughout the demonstration, I've had a spring reverb on there just to give it some real life feel of a true valve amp. So if we turn that off first and foremost, that's the amplifier completely dry.
Yep.
Now the cool thing about the effects is what you might find with a lot of other modelling amps and digital amps is that the effects either on and in your face or not at all. So it's not variable enough. So we give you 4 types of reverb, 4 types of modulation, 4 types of delay, and you can have 3 simultaneous effects on at one time. Of course, the delays and the modulations give you a tap tempo as well, so you can control the pulse or the speed. So we'll look at reverbs first. If we leave the level roughly about halfway, and we've got a segment, 4 segments, and the segment goes from a minimum to a maximum. So if we just go a little bit into the first segment, which is room. Nice whole room reverb there. As we turn it up, get a larger room. Nice studio reverb.
Yep.
Again, the same principle on hall, which is our second segment. If we just go a little bit into the segment, we get virtually a small hall. And further into the segment there, we get a large hall.
Spacious.
Yeah. My personal favourite, which is spring reverb, which is the third segment. If we go a little bit into the segment and turn the level down to about here, to kind of give it a mirror image, we get a classic spring reverb that you'd hope to find on most classic valve amps. Now the nice thing about this is very versatile. If you're looking for an ambient tone to maybe use on recording or just to jam by yourself, if you increase that segment all the way, just before the LED change, and then turn the level up, we virtually get what you'd probably deem as a cathedral reverb. So it's great for volume swells, great for blues if you're just playing by yourself, or ambient sound for recording. But check it out, it's pretty cool. You can hear it's got a huge decay, but it's really worth mentioning that to a customer because not many digital amps will give you that versatility on one reverb effect. So it's very, very cool.
The decay on it is actually really natural.
Yeah,
it's not breaking off at all.
Very much so, yeah, it's very natural. And lastly, we have a plate reverb, so you can kind of consider this more of a gated reverb, if you will. You can have a very short, great for that kind of funk. Nice for that kind of vibe.
Yeah, spot on.
So, you know, 4 reverbs, really, really cool. So what I tend to do is just select a spring that's fairly large so I can hear what's happening. And then I turn that one off. Then I go to the next level, so that's going to be delays. So the first segment, which is our linear delay, so it's very clear, almost like a digital delay. A good thing to show a customer and to explain how easy it is, if the segment's all the way off, you simply just get one repeat. Very cool, so you can get your slapbacks and such. As we increase through the segment, we start to get more feedback.
Tails,
Yeah, so if we go to the top of the segment, we'll just slow the tap tempo down a touch, turn the level up, and it's virtually infinite. So you've got lots of control. So it's like having a really good delay pedal in front of you, and it's based on our HT delay range. Okay, so our first segment, the linear delay, just to give you a quick example of that. Nice and clear. Next segment is analog, so the delay repeat is a squelched repeat as it decays. So if we just give that a little bit more tempo. If you hear that decay, which is pretty cool. The third segment, tape echo. This is really good for those kind of 60s fans of the original kind of copycat tape echo. And if you get it just right, and I find the best way to do it is to increase it so it's a long decay with a big level, and you can generally hear what's happening, but the pitch will waver of the delay. It will either tail up or go off at the end, which is pretty cool for people to hear. So it helps if the tempo's a little faster, so we'll try that. Hear it tail off at the end, yeah, that's very cool. And sometimes it goes up. It's a little bit intermittent on where it goes up and down, but that's great.
But
it kind of
those units.
very much so it reacts the same, which is very cool. And then the last setting, which is my personal favourite, which is multi-tap, so it's a tempo-driven delay.
Okay.
So we'll just slow that down for a moment. So it works in a tempo, so if you get the right song, it will work pretty cool. So usually I go with you can get a really nice ambient tone, so if you talk about bands like Incubus and Limp Bizkit and that kind of thing, so you can get that kind of vibe. Yeah, or if you play something along the lines of Satriani and get that nice kind of nice. It works really well if you get the tempo for the song right. So that's great. We'll leave it on there for now for that particular setting and turn that off. Onto the modulations. Again, this becomes very interesting. It's very versatile. Your tap tempo now pulses for the speed. So rather than flashing for the tempo, you can see the swirl of the flanger or the chorus. So if you slow that right down by pressing it very, very slow, and the type right to the bottom of the segment, you can get a very subtle phaser or a very subtle flange and so on. So it's good to point that out because sometimes, again, referring to a lot of other competitors' amps out there, it's often very creamy or not at all. So if we look at more of a subtle phaser. Yeah, so again, if we bring the level down a touch, and we'll go with some Nile Rodgers or something like that. If we increase the speed and a little bit more depth on the type and the level, we'll start to get more of a creamier phaser. And it's the same principle for flanger, which is our next segment. Slow it right down. Bring the type down. Nice and subtle.
Yeah.
Or we can get really creamy with it. Yeah. Onto chorus. And the same principle there, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Our last segment is where it gets a little bit interesting. There's really three things going on here that you can talk to a customer about. First and foremost is a tremolo effect. So if we just slow that down a touch, the level will increase the scoop. Interestingly, if we bring the level down, increase the type all the way, and have a fast tempo on the tap, we virtually get almost a rotary effect. And then the third thing that's happening in that segment is if we increase the level, there is a slicer effect which kicks in, so you get more depth to the tremolo.
Okay.
So. So if we increase that, you'll hear it a lot better. It's kind of cool.
Modern.
Very modern, yeah, slicer effect. So very cool. Three things going on in that fourth segment of modulation. So if we come back to something like a phaser for now, which is our first segment. Just to show you now, we can have three simultaneous effects. So if I press delay, we'll have a multi-tap ready, which we had saved last time,
Yep.
and a spring reverb. So the last LED that you touch will be green,
Okay.
or the last switch for your modulations and delays and reverbs will be green. Green means that current effect is in focus to be edited.
Okay.
So if you want it off, just press it twice,
Yeah.
or turn it on. So the last one you press will always be green, just to kind of give you an idea of what the LEDs are doing. So now we should have a spring reverb, a multi-tap delay, and a touch of phaser. Pretty cool, really. Three simultaneous effects. So from the first point of the voicing that we were talking about, right up to the end of the effects, you can save any of that to your presets or stored patches, which is very cool. This end section here, which appears on the 60 watt ID amp and above, which is resonance, presence and master volume really is there to tailor the sound of your amp to the room you're playing in. So if you're playing a large hall, for example, you'll want probably a lot more resonance on your cab, a lot more bass response. If you're playing a room that's got a low ceiling with a carpet, you'll probably want a bit more presence to give it a bit more life. So it's there to shape the sound of your amplifier to the room. Yep. But none of that master section gets saved to your presets.
Okay.
So now that we've gone through the main functions of the amp, we can now refer to the bank mode. So manual is as you see it on the tin. Bank mode is where our stored patches are saved. So now I can show you the Insider software, which is a free download from blackstaramps.com. So I'll just open that up here. And we can immediately see that it's an extension of the amplifier. So we've got all of our controls across the top, apart from our master section, and our 3 effects pedals. So if I move my dial around on ISF, you can hopefully see that it's working in real time on the computer.
Yep.
You can also change the reading on here via your mouse. The indicator on the knob will turn red to let you know you've changed it internally.
Got you.
The dials won't change physically, which is a good thing.
Yes.
So, if we put that back up there, also you can control the pedals from there as well, so you've got real-time control over your pedals. So it's like you've actually got the HT valve pedals, boutique pedals in your hand, and you can adjust them to get a much deeper editing option.
That's a good feature.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, you could imagine your amplifier in your live room, mic'd up, ready to record, and your controllability in the control room, which is pretty cool.
Definitely.
So, if we close our effects pedals down, the next thing to look at is the library, where we can store all of our presets. Now, this big table on the right are my own presets.
Okay.
There's about 15 in there, and what I've tried to do is just give an impression of a classic riff or a classic guitar player. And the table on the left there is the presets in the amplifier. Okay. So this table on the right is mine. The table on the left is the presets in the amp. You can store 128 presets, 128. You can access those via the software or the foot switch.
Yep.
If you've only got the amplifier, you've got 3 banks of 4, so you can only access 12 on the front here. There's a green bank, an amber bank, and a red bank consisting of 4 channels.
Makes sense.
To save on the actual amplifier, it's nice and easy. Once you've dialed up your sound, just simply press and hold. It will flash, and then press again for your location, and it will save to there for you.
Okay.
Importantly, it's good to mention to the sales guys as well as customers that when the amplifier arrives, it arrives in demo mode, and that enables anybody to mess around with it in store, and when you turn it off, it goes back to its original factory state. To take the amplifier out of demo mode, it's just a simple procedure of turning the amplifier off,
Yep.
holding manual down, turning the amplifier on, and you'll see the bank LED scroll through red, amber and green, and then it's good to go.
Yep.
All right?
No problem.
And that's worth mentioning to customers, okay? So, let me just run through a few of these classic examples, and hopefully they should be fairly near. So I've used the effects, TVP, voicing, where my ISF, whether it's UK or US, just to kind of get close to those guys. So let's look at something like another brick in the wall here. So you can see all of my settings change on there. So I've gone for a nice clean American combo. It's a warm sound, touch of flanger then, touch of spring reverb as well. It's pretty close. The top one, Ain't Talking About Love, so we can kind of get that Eddie sound. So high gain American, 6L6 ISF on the American side. I've got some phaser there and some delay. It's kind of close.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's pretty cool. Let's look at something like One Vision. So we can kind of imitate that Brian May tone.
Yep.
EL84s, British, nice spongy overdrive. told you there'd be some classic riffs in there. Run to You is a very popular one, and when I say popular, I'm referring to the online community.
Yeah. Okay.
The online community allows you to have a username and a password,
Mhm.
and you can store all your presets on there with a description and a genre and a subgenre. You can actually tag it very much like
Okay.
YouTube, so you can search.
So it's all shareable. as
Yeah,
well?
it's all shareable.
Excellent.
And the nice thing about the online community is it's not a forum. No one can go on there and say, I don't really like your sound. If you don't like it, just delete it. You don't have to share yours, but you can if you want to. So that's a very nice feature. Run to You is very popular. All of my presets are on the online community under the name Blackstar Product Trainer.
Makes sense.
Yep. So when I say popular, that's not going to pick up. When I say popular, there's possibly about 200 downloads on Run to You. So again, went for a British EL84 tone, a bit of chorus there, but you can probably see from the gain, I'm up quite high on clean bright. So it's a boutique clean amp. When I dig in hard, I'll get a little bit of grind there,
Got you.
but when I play softly, it'll be nice and clean, hopefully. So. Kind of works
Spot on.
fairly well, yeah. School's Out. This is actually from Tommy Henriksen, who's a Blackstar endorsee. He's Alice Cooper's guitar player currently.
Okay. Cool.
And he did a little preset for School's Out. Again, you can download artist patches, which is very cool. So if we just select that, this is actually Alice Cooper's guitar player that's done this on the ID amp. So it kind of works. It sounds pretty close. He's gone for a 6L6, more of a British tone. So it's kind of interesting, but it works for School's Out.
Really
It
close.
sounds pretty close, yeah. So that's where you can store all your library of presets. If I just choose my Angus Young tone, back in black there,
Mhm.
and I close my library down, this is a really exciting part of the software, again, which is all free. You've got an audio section where you can import any digital music from your library on your computer,
Okay.
and it will appear as a very retro cassette tape deck, and it will appear handwritten as well, which is very cool.
Yep.
You've got a volume control on here, and also a speed control. There's a phrase trainer as well, so when you've got the
Okay,
track
yep.
uploaded, you can slow it down, but it doesn't change the pitch. So if somebody's learning, or if somebody's an intermediate or to professional player, yeah, if you're learning that difficult riff or that classic solo that you want to just nail right, you can slow it down to pick out all the individual notes. So if we get my Back in Black backing track up, if I double click it, it'll appear in my tape deck there, which is pretty cool. Now interestingly, just to let you know, I've got my audio coming out of my laptop into the back of the amplifier.
Okay.
Just to let you know what's on the back there, we've got MIDI out, so you can use a MIDI board to change your presets.
Got you.
We've got a separate foot controller for our FS10 here, which is connected via a guitar jack,
Yep.
which is nice. That comes supplied. Next to there, we've got an MP3 input, which I'm using for the audio from my laptop. And next to that, we've got an emulated line out, so that's interesting as well. You can connect to a direct source. It might be a mixer, it might be a DI box,
Yes.
or it might be a sound card. So you can take a emulated line out from there, so there's no need to mic it if you don't want to. It's great for live use, so that's
Yeah.
really cool. So all being well, we'll have audio come through the speakers as well as our saturated guitar tone. So that's my Angus sound. You can probably see I've gone for a British EL34.
Yep.
Again, if I play lightly, it's nice to. It's got that Angus Young feel. But if I dig in hard, it's kind of cool.
Yep.
Represents him quite well, I think. So as soon as we press play, hopefully we'll get a mixture of the music. Now, this is really cool to talk to your customers about as well. There is no audio tracks or backing tracks that come supplied with the Insider software,
Okay.
but I use a website called guitarbackingtrack.com. So that's www.guitarbackingtrack.com.
Yep.
all of the songs on there are generally the original track minus the guitar. So it might be a live version, it might be a cover version, but more often than not it's the original, which is cool because you can dial up your favourite tone here and jam along with your favourite song.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
Very
so
useful.
there are points where I'll stop just to let you know that it is the guitar you're hearing,
Yep.
and you'll probably hear a little bit of Angus and Malcolm Young's guitar coming through the drum overheads because it's a live version.
Of course,
Okay,
yeah.
so. So that's pretty cool. You can hear, you know, the guitar is playing along, and when I stopped, you can hear the guitar fall out, which is great. If I'm a beginner and I want to learn that nice little intricate lead lick between the riff, I can slow it right down and try and nail that. So you go to your speed control
Yep.
and just slow it down a touch, and then we'll play it again, and it will be in the same pitch in the key of E,
Okay.
but a lot slower. Okay, so this is a really good thing to show a customer because if you have the facility to have a laptop around and show somebody, you can see you're getting your money's worth, very much so. You know, it's a fantastic program. Phrase trainers aren't cheap, but this is free. So let me just show you a true audio of an MP3, so it's not a live track, so it's a bit clearer.
Okay.
It'll be a blues backing track, but I'll play a little bit of lead over it, which an Angus tone will generally suit anyway.
Makes
So,
sense,
blues backing track, and this is a true audio, so it's a lot clearer.
yeah. Yep.
Now, if you don't get the facility to have a laptop in store, which sometimes can't happen if a store's very busy, what you could do is have the right connectors, like a 3.5mm to 1/4 inch jack for something like this 60-watt head,
Yep.
and just have a track on your phone or your mobile
Makes
device.
sense, yeah.
So you could have an MP3 ready to go that you know how to play, just so you can demonstrate the audio coming through the amp and just jam along. You don't necessarily have to slow it down, but it is an impressive thing to show someone.
It's a nice feature, yeah.
Yeah, so we also have a metronome in there. We can change the tone, the beats per minute, and also the level of that. I'll just demonstrate that to you quickly. Again, so it's ideal for somebody who's practicing their scales at home. And we've got a tuner as well. So we've got a chromatic tuner on screen. The tuner will also appear on the amp and on the pedal.
Okay.
So to access the tuner on the amplifier, just simply press and hold manual.
Yep.
And there you go. Your bank will become your E, A, D, G, B, and then back to bank for your high octave of E.
Okay, cool.
Delay will be in tune in green.
Mhm.
Reverb and modulation will be your sharp and your flat.
Right, yeah.
And of course it will appear on the pedal as well on the FS10.
Superb.
I'll show you, I'll come to that in a moment. So, and that's really the inside of software. It's not any more complicated than that, yeah. So a lot of people generally get put off by a bit of software if they're not used to it, but it really is just a nice extension of the amp.
Definitely.
Of course, recording wise, you can use it with that as well. There are 3 ways really you can record the amp. You can either mic it up, you can use the emulated line out, or you can take the USB into a computer that's running Cubase or Pro Tools or any recording software, and it will give you a stereo bus signal, which you can have a dry signal for reamping and a wet signal, which is what your distortion, your delay will hold.
Fantastic.
So a true stereo bus signal. So lastly, we'll come to the pedal. Now the way the pedal works, there's 3 lines to look at, and the first place you need to look is what mode you're on. Okay, everything that's highlighted in white is the main function. Everything underneath that isn't highlighted in white is an alternative hold function.
Okay.
So that's how simple that is. So you can see here it says hold for mode, and that will allow us to scroll through. So if we just get it back to the top there. So at the moment we're on patch.
Mhm.
When we're in patch mode, it'll allow us to change channel 1, channel 2, channel 3 and channel 4 in that particular bank.
Okay.
The alternative function underneath, hold for bank down and hold for bank up. So if I press hold down, it will go down in groups of 4 to our first bank. So we're on channel 1, channel 2, channel 3 and channel 4 in that particular bank.
Okay.
It's as easy as that.
Very simple.
Next line down, because everything works horizontally, press and hold. We're now on our effects line. So now that gives us the opportunity to use Stompbox mode. We can turn our reverb on and off, our delay on and off, our modulation on and off on that particular preset
Yep.
with a tap tempo at the end.
Okay, cool.
If you want to tap the tempo on the delay and the modulation, just press and hold for about 5 seconds on each.
Yep.
So if you want to tap the tempo of the delay, press and hold, and that will allow us to tap the tempo for the speed of that song. The last line is the one that the customer will most appreciate. Navigation mode.
Mhm.
Now this is a really nice feature which allows you to choose the preset that you want and it won't change until you're ready to go. So if you imagine our rhythm sound is on 004, patch number 4, but we want our lead sound which is located on number 1, if we press bank down, one at a time, it will flash until you're ready to recall.
Okay.
Okay?
Nice. Well done.
So let's just give you an example of that. If we just select number 1, which just happens to be a nice clean,
Yep.
maybe the next part of the song we need patch number 6. So while we're on the floor, we can press with our foot and get it ready to number 6.
Yep.
And when we're ready to go for that next section of the song, so it's a really great feature. Navigation is probably the most usable feature, depending on how many presets you've got. You know,
That's it.
if you want to go up in groups of 4, again, you can hold for bank up and hold for bank down. And it will get through them a lot quicker in groups of 4, as you can see. And wherever you stop, that's where you'll end up. You can store on the fly as well. So if you've adjusted the amp live,
Yep.
in a live environment without your laptop, you can press and hold store here and it will store to the location that you choose.
Okay, cool.
Of course the tuner, hold for tuner, if you press hold there. If you're connected to your laptop you'll see it appears on there as well. And you'll get a nice display in the middle which will let you know if it's in tune, sharp or flat. Nice and easy. Okay. Now really the cherry on the cake to talk about is, let's give you an example of a live environment without the laptop. If we just select our library for the moment and choose our Metallica setting, which is nice high gain sound, you can probably see on there that our gain is set all the way up.
Yep.
Yep. So, if we look physically at the amp, the gain is set just before noon. So if we're at a show and we can't tell where that is by visually looking at the amp.
Okay.
But we know, because we've got our insider software, it's up to all the way, high gain.
Yep.
The cool thing about this is there's a little discrete, tiny green LED in the corner here
Oh, yeah.
that will wink when you reach that value. And until you reach that value, it won't change or alter the sound. So it won't give you any nasty jumps or anything like that. So if you look at the screen while I'm moving gain around, you'll see that it's not moving at all.
No.
Now if you put your attention to this little green discrete LED here,
Yep.
and I turn it up all the way, you see it flash? And that lets you know that you've achieved that value. So now when you bring it back, it allows you to adjust.
Okay, good.
So that really is the
You
cherry
have
on
to
the
get
cake.
value before you adjust.
Yeah.
Nice and easy.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks for listening, and hopefully
much,
that's going to
thank
give you
you.
some ingredients to show customers and
More than a
sell
few.
lots of ID amps. All
Definitely.
right. Thanks,
Thank you very
buddy.
much.
Thanks to everyone at Jaywalk Guitars, and
Always a pleasure.
good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.